What's up, everybody? We got a breaking news podcast for you guys today. I'm Christian Fowler. Joining me is my guy, Kenny Stubblefield, coming to break a little bit of news, discuss a little bit of news. Caleb Mills, former Florida State and Houston guard, has committed to Memphis. Kenny, what are the thoughts? What are the feelings on Caleb Mills headed to Memphis?
I mean, obviously, you look at somebody like Caleb, and he kind of fits the mold of what Penny has been looking for over the last couple of years, and that's a veteran leadership, a guy who has produced at probably a higher level than anybody that he got last year outside of Kendrick Davis, I would think. But in terms of just the kind of role that he will fill, playing, he was a rookie of the year in the AAC for Houston a few years back, played 2 years at Florida State, and is now in the transfer portal as a grad transfer. And Tiger fans will know Caleb Mills really well. I mean, they've seen him play, numerous times, played against him numerous times. And I think it's a good get, man. I like Caleb's game. He's got a very specific type of game that I think fits Penny's system really, really well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Like you mentioned, played at Houston for 2 years, so we got to see him up close and personal a few times before he transitioned to Florida State, transferred to Florida State, spent 2 years there. This past season, 13 points, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists per game. That's pretty much what his career has been. That's a right around his career watermark for numbers. He's been extremely consistent. He hasn't really had any spike years. He hasn't really had any down years. He's just kind of stayed at the same level throughout his collegiate career. Played it with a really, really bad Florida State team this past year, which I think that might have some people maybe underranking him a little bit or undervaluing him a little bit. But we saw what he did on that Houston team. We saw how important he was to that Houston team a few years ago. And as you mentioned, AAC Rookie of the Year, and I believe he was the preseason Player of the Year. If I'm not mistaken, I could be off on that, but I think I've seen that. I think I looked that up a couple days ago that he was the 2019 or 2020 preseason Player of the Year. Just a really sound, technical, smooth player. Kind of what you see is what you get. He's not necessarily splashy. He's not necessarily the flashiest guy that's in the transfer portal right now, but he is solid. He's consistent. As you mentioned, he's a veteran. Been in college for 4 years, a grad transfer now. That's another question I'm sure people will have is he immediately eligible? Or are they going to have to get a waiver because he's already transferred once, but he's a grad transfer, so
he's
good
ready
to go there.
Yeah,
which is good news because I know sometimes that freaks people out, and it should it should after a couple of the instances that have happened under Penny Hardaway. But year one, he's ready to go. Doesn't have to wait. Doesn't have to get a waiver since he graduated from Florida State. What do you think about his game, and what do you think he brings to this team? Because we know it's not fully built yet. Obviously, still got to get freshmen in. Could add more pieces potentially. But as it sits right now, what does he bring to this team?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's easy if you go back and you look at Florida State highlights from the past year, and I think you're right. And this is no disrespect to Leonard Hamilton, who's a hell of a coach, but Florida State was not good this year. And if you look at Caleb Mills' game, he's a decent, maybe below average 3-point shooter. He's stayed pretty consistent throughout his 4 years in college in terms of percentage, but his usage has gone down in that way. So like he's shooting, I think 3 or 4 a game and making less than 1 a game, this last year in Florida State. So he's not a high usage.
He shot 29% from 3 this year after he's been pretty up and down. 37%, 25%, 35%, 29%. But as you mentioned, usage has a lot to do with that.
Right. Like a usage thing, right? Like obviously he came out of the gate in Houston as a freshman and he was a really solid, really good player. And it might be a system thing with, Kelvin Sampson. He takes guys like Caleb Mills and turns them into superstars, right? Like into guys that can play, that are really, really good. That's what he's known for. Obviously, second year at Houston, he was hurt. I think he messed his ankle up and then transferred.
Played 4 games.
Yeah, played 4 games and then left the team. And then obviously went to Florida State for 2 years. What I saw out of Caleb Mills this last year, after not really having seen him play much over the last couple of years, is he is a decent defender who fills passing lanes, who can read and react pretty well on the defensive side of the ball. And when he gets the ball, he really has like one thing in mind, and that's to go. Like he is a get the ball and go as fast as he can. And the reason why I think this is such a good pickup for Penny Hardaway's team is Penny Hardaway's offense is predicated off of getting stops on defense and going. Now, with Florida State, they were such a bad team. Most of the time, they were taking the ball in from the other team's goal, right? Like they were taking it from out of bounds because they just weren't stopping really anybody. And so it's going to be interesting to me to see how Caleb adjusts to a defensive-heavy, defensive-minded, first-minded team like Penny Hardaway's teams are, and how that helps him as he is, that guy to steal a ball, steal a pass, whatever it may be, and get it and go. Get the ball and go. That's what he does really, really well. He's not a fantastic shooter, so I wouldn't see him. I could see, like Keontae Kennedy's a better shooter than he is from the three-point line. Keontae led the AAC for a portion of the season this year in three-point shooting. But Caleb is a great, great transition guy, get the ball from one side of the court to the other, and he's a really, really good passer. So that's what I see with Caleb Mills' game.
Yeah, he's a 10 to 15 a night guy.
Yeah.
He's not a 25, he's not going to average 19 to 22 points per game. That's just not his game. Like you said, he's an unselfish player. He passes the ball, but he takes his opportunities when he gets them. So he's a 10 to 15 a night, which, I mean, how can you argue with that? How can you say that's not a good pickup? Someone that's a 10 to 15 a night score like that.
Let's not scoff at that, right? Like,
no,
let's not scoff at that. Yeah.
Not at all. And we know how loaded this transfer class is right now. Just the transfer portal in general, how many top caliber players have entered. I believe he's 60 at On3 and 69 or 70 at 247, which I know some people may be like, oh, that's pretty low. But when you look at how stacked there's so many top level talents that are in the transfer portal right now. And so to get a top 60, top 70 guy, it's not a top 5 guy. We get that. We understand that. It's the same thing surrounding Nick Jourdain. It's not one of the elite guys, but he's a really good, really sound basketball player that is a guy that can help teams win games. And then you're going to have people say, well, they didn't win games at Florida State this year. Well, he didn't have anybody around him to help him win games.
Nobody, Christian. That team was really bad.
They were really bad. And you mentioned, getting into passing lanes, disturbing passes and stuff like that. Over the last 2 years at Florida State, 1.5 and 1.3 steals a game. Yeah. So, not numbers that will lead the conference, but certainly really, really solid steal numbers for Caleb Mills. So I think it's another addition that may fly a little bit under the radar. Not as much as Nick Jourdain, because Caleb Mills is a pretty well-known player, especially here because he did spend 2 years at one of the best teams in the country that Memphis had consistent battles with. They were really going back and forth in that time.
Yeah.
So a lot of people remember him, and it's not like he hasn't received big-time interest. There's been a lot of big-time schools calling about Caleb Mills and trying to get him in. So this is not a small get by any means.
Yeah, let's not downplay this. Like there weren't a ton of, in football they call them Power 5 schools, that there weren't a ton of Power 5 schools that would want Caleb Mills on their roster. Penny just got him. And I think that says a lot about, I remember Demaria Franklin, when he halfway through the season, I had a chance to talk to him on Bluff City Media. And one of the things he said was the reason why he came to Memphis is because of the defensive mindset that Penny has. Like you saw the things that Demaria was able to do at NIU, and he was what did I say?
NIU.
UIC, excuse me. Forget them anyway. They didn't sign the waiver. But he said the reason why he came was specifically because he loved Penny Hardaway's defensive schemes. And I have a feeling that's probably a lot of the reason why Caleb is here. Caleb's going to score. Caleb's going to do what he's going to do on the offensive side of the ball. But, someone who's that old, somebody who's played for that many years knows how his bread is buttered on the basketball court. And I think that, it wasn't that nobody else wanted Caleb. It's that Penny Hardaway's system is what brought him to Memphis.
Yep. So before we get out of here, we're going to try to keep this pretty quick. You got any other thoughts on, his fit or what Penny is building so far in this transfer class and kind of the way that we're seeing this class take shape early on?
This is the second year that he's really been active in the portal, and made it very clear that the portal is going to be how he's going to rebuild his roster. Obviously, he's got, a good group of freshman guys coming in. So there's going to be some interest in seeing how those guys do this year. But he is absolutely having to rebuild, the main like heart and soul of his team through the transfer portal. And what's interesting is last year it was such a quick little like burst of energy because I think Kendrick Davis was one of his first transfer portal commits.
Yeah, it was around this time last year. It was like
maybe
mid-April.
Mid-April, sure. Right? And so I think there's a level of anticipation with all the top level talent, like you talked about, that's in the transfer portal right now. And I think those guys are there, and Penny is absolutely talking to them. What I like about what he's doing right now is he is bringing guys into this roster, into this team that absolutely have a role and absolutely know what their role is and will be major cogs in this team going as far as they can possibly go. Nick Jourdain, if he's your linchpin piece for this transfer portal, probably not a great class. But if he's a building block, he is a fantastic building block. Caleb Mills is the same way, even though I put Caleb Mills higher than Nick Jourdain in that level. But these guys are great pieces.
Yep, completely agree. I think it'll be interesting to see, the next dominoes to fall, what happens next, because we know this stuff changes every day with players entering, with, different people being reached out to, different guys taking visits. So this stuff is just as crazy as normal high school recruiting, if not crazier. So
wild, man.
Stay locked in, stay tuned. We'll keep you updated with all the latest information over at bluffcitymedia.co. You can also check us out on YouTube at Bluff City Media and on all of our socials, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff to stay in the know on the latest with Memphis Tigers basketball, football, transfer portal, you name it. And we got you covered on it. But with that being said, check out all of our other podcasts on the Bluff, myself and Gabe, Tigers Untapped, Will Coleman Show, and all the shows brought to you by the GBB guys. Kenny, you got anything else?
We're good, man.
All right. See y'all later.